Welcome. This chapter was insane. If you haven't seen my reaction, it'll be up probably on Sunday. I'll have to see because that's when the official comes out and all that. So it might be in the description, by the way. It was insane. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the chapter. We're going to do a little chapter breakdown of the chapter. Starting off with the cover page, we have Yamato and the others that we saw in the last one. They're actually at what seems to be Ryuma's grave. Apparently he was from the West Point. It might be someone else, but I'm not going to dwell on this a lot, but it's there. The chapter starts off with us seeing the events that we saw in the Big Mom flashback of Big Mom killing Yorul. And we then see all of the unlucky things that happened to Elbaf after that, including the Big Mom stuff. And Estrid, the queen, has then chalked that up to it being the Loki's curse that we ended off last chapter on. And as we can see in the chapter, there's a lot of famine. They're freezing to death. People are just not having a good time. And then we see Loki trying to go up to Estrid in the castle, but they don't allow that. Estrid says to gouge out his eyes. Later on in the chapter, you do see him having his eyes still, so they didn't do that, but he's denied any access to her. And we then see the internal conflicts that are happening at Elbaf currently. They're talking about the hunter village coming to raid the different villages because of this famine and this freezing winter. Winter is coming, right? And I really do love seeing the internal politics of Elbaf and seeing the culture and how they kind of respond to this. Because even in the chapter it says internal giant struggles weren't unheard of during desperate times, which is a nice parallel to them always causing trouble outside, right? Causing struggles. And now this rumor that Loki is the cause of this has spread. The common folk are saying he's cursed. And then there's this old guy who says this to Haruden. He then starts threatening Ida, but then suddenly Harold comes through and he actually beats some sense into him. And as seen in the last chapter, Harold wasn't originally there, so he's then now come back from these journeys, and he talks about how these famines and these terrible things that had happened to Elbaf, the people of the outside world, all the humans, they're gonna help them with rations and food and supplies. And I thought it was very, very nice seeing this. And then officially Estrid dies, and we actually see Loki with the bandages on now. And then they mention how these eyes, they come with some sort of ability. But Harold, he just says, I understand, what a pity. And we see Harold trying to even build more communication and trade within Elbaf. They talk about the branch route number 1, right? And Estrid's brother is currently Loki's personal steward. Now, I don't know why they would do that. It does make a bit of sense, but... And the next thing you know, the hut that we saw a little bit of Elbaf when we saw Shanks and Kid, and the hut that we saw from the beginning of the arc, was actually founded by Ida. Where she is at the current time, I don't know. I talked a little bit about her being in the fisherman village. She does talk about how the tavern is for the fishermen, castaways, and even pirates, right, to help Harold, which is another mirror to Estrid not really giving a shit, right? She didn't really care. And they also mention a guy named Elbow, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the guy we see in the Big Mom flashback training Harden. He was also a part of the Giant Warrior Pirates. And then 56 years ago at Yaru's house, and it's also on some clouds. And remember, when he came down with a ship, so maybe it's kind of like higher up. But they talk about the Reverie incident, which we know has happened now, but this is one that's happened prior in the past. And apparently, Harold got the help of one of his friends, who was a king, to get smuggled in as one of the guards. Now, how he did that, don't ask me, I have no clue. But they probably do have some... No, they probably don't have giant guards, actually. I don't know how he did that, but He does say though that if the murder hadn't happened, he would have been exposed. And obviously, you know what the murder was. I'll talk. That happens later. So, and they also talk about Galley Raw Warhammer Company, and it might be a spin on Galley Law. Apparently, it says on TCB. Harold actually says there are a troop of giant shipwrights that arm themselves with warhammers, and he didn't even know they were real. So apparently, they've gone out maybe on scouting or reports from a long, long time ago, but they've apparently all been captured. And they say that some of them were even ancient giants. Now, I do know who these are. These are definitely the giants from Punk Hazard. You might not remember this, but there's a panel, you can probably see here, of some frozen giants that the Straw Crew see when they walk through Punk Hazard. It is in one of the rooms. That is very, very interesting. So apparently, maybe some Vegapunk play, since it's Punk Hazard. And we get this mention of a great enemy, right? Which have been talked about throughout the whole series. So I'm not going to dwell into that. But Jarl then mentions this frozen army that I was talking about a little bit later. And I think they probably took those Warhammer people and probably put them there. Now they do, I'm pretty sure, have some prisoner clothing on. So I don't know how that works out. But, or maybe the Warhammer giants just died. They sank them and that's it. And this is a different kind of people. But it would be kind of weird for Oda to introduce someone like that. But also they had ancient giants, right? So, but I don't know. We then see some panels of Loki smiling as he grows up, doing now no good for the people of Elbaf. And we see Harold achieving his dreams, but in the meantime, the people around him, and like his kids, are having a bad time. For example, Harudin, who's getting bullied by Loki. Loki then attacks everyone in the village, which we did hear about previously, earlier in the arc, and we see all of the previous giant monsters that he was friends with, and the wolf that eventually does die by Gunko. And Harudin actually tries to step up to him, but Loki just doesn't understand why he even is trying to do this and why his dad is then trying to play nice with the humans. And Harudin actually says a line that Ida said to Harold last chapter: "Don't get cocky just because you're big." But Loki then hits him, and we get Gerd and Goldberg trying to help him. And there's this cool little connection between all of them, right? Because we do see them care about Loki previously, when Loki is in current times banged up, right? So we see them now growing up together. And this is all just coping from Loki's side, because he then sees a mother and a child, and he kind of gets, a little jealous. And then he tries to jump off, which we also saw with Robin. We got the little extension of her flashback earlier in the arc as well. But then, oh boy, then we get the panel of probably the last few chapters. And we get an awesome double page spread, not full double page spread, but double page spread of Rox D. Xebec and his then crew. He wasn't the captain at this point, or maybe the crew wasn't really official, but we do see him, we see his face, and we get the line of him being the father of Blackbeard. And behind him on this panel, we do see Whitebeard, Shiki, and then someone else. And I mean, it could be Gloriosa, it could be Stussy, it could be Blackbeard's mom. But Xebec he really wants to know if Harold is here and if this is Elbaf. Why wouldn't they? It's kind of weird how they wouldn't know if this was Elbaf though. Like, do they not see the tree? Or did they get teleported here, maybe? But him wanting to see Harold is connected back to the incident at Reverie, which they talked with Jarl and Harold talked about previously. And apparently, Rox had killed a Navy admiral. Who was this admiral? I would love to know. And he got a massive bounty because of this. And that is basically the chapter, guys. I love the chapter. I thought it was amazing. I did a reaction, which I'm going to upload on Sunday. If it's not out, just wait until then. If it is out, check the description below. I'll have some videos at the end of the video. And yeah, amazing chapter. What do you think? Comment down below, like, subscribe. Have a great day. Have an awesome day. And bye.